Hello everyone, it's Brian, and welcome back to Twilight Struggle, Play the Experts, the game where I play the experts, so that you won't feel bad about your own mistakes. Last time we began by handing our opponent 7 victory points through a series of Middle East things, and spent the rest of the turn trying to simultaneously beat him back out of South Korea and get more than nothing in the African battlegrounds. Now, the second turn started with an unusual timinged OPEC headlined by our opponent, which led us to suspect something was up, but we couldn't tell exactly what it was. He sat there and overprotected a lot of things, and then suddenly played Camp David Accords, the Colonial Rearguards, the Marshall Plan, and the Voice of America, all consecutively in a row. He had a horrible hand, and we had purged him so he couldn't space any of it. So we got surprisingly little for that, but at least our position in Africa looks a little bit less horrible, and we have straightened up our Asia. And so as we head into turn 5, we see that our opponent has headlined the Junta card, and we need to figure out what to do next. So let's, as they say, look at our hand and make a plan. All right. We will bury you. Probably go into space this time. I mean, it does serve as sort of a prophylactic against missile envy, but it's easily our worst card, and so since we want to space something, we probably are going to just go ahead and space that. It's not playable for ops in any realistic scenario, particularly given the Junta headline. So it's probably going to space. A little note, Korean War, well, that would have perhaps been the thing to go to space just because of that 1 in 6 risk of total disaster. However, we have reached that amazing point on the space track where we can only space 3 and higher ops cards. So Korean War, we're going to have to probably just be taking a chance on. Moving right along to the Arab-Israeli War, that's free ops because Camp David is now in effect and the event can't go off, so it's just 2 ops. Grain sales for Soviets, one of our best cards, one of our 2 best headlines, so let's come back to that in headline analysis phase. Alliance for Progress, normally a great card, and one that we should be trying to score for some victory points, but we only even have one battleground in all of the Americas, and that even itself is a bit under threat due to the whole Junta thing. So whether we end up getting, 1 point for it, or we go ahead and take the 3 ops and just hope it comes back for us in late war, remains to be seen, but I suspect it's going to be ops. U2 incident. It's always sad to give your opponent a victory point, even 1 victory point for 3 ops, but we'll probably be having to do that this time because between We Will Bury You and U2 incident, well, We Will Bury You is probably going on a spaceship. Sadat expels Soviets, our other potential good headline for this turn, so hold him aside for a moment. And then there is East European unrest, probably 3 ops because it's probably not ripping a couple of his guys out of Eastern Europe is probably not important enough in the current situation to be worth that card. And then Korean War, we've already said, is going to have to be ops. And 1 small step is going to be 2 ops because, of course, it isn't very likely to be playable for us. So that brings us to headline phase. And the classic, almost no-brainer headline for the U.S. is grain sales to Soviets. Why? Well, it both steals a card from his hand, putting pressure on his hand, and he doesn't even have the China card anymore. It also lets us steal the coup, even from the Junta, because, our events of the same magnitude go off before his events in headline phase, so grain sales to Soviets would have precedence over Junta, and we would be able to steal his coup, and so then Junta would have to either uselessly coup Costa Rica, or it would have to be used for realignment roles, presumably in Panama. So there's that. Or Or, because there is an actual somewhat viable alternative, and that is Sadat expels Soviets, because Sadat expels Soviets would completely excrete him from the Western Middle East, and he would no longer be in Egypt, nor would he even touch Libya, and we would have control of Egypt. And that's kind of pretty good. Knocking him out of a region where he can't get back in is pretty good. And if things were a little bit different in the which areas are going to score next, then I would feel differently about this. Imagine that we had already scored Central America and Africa, for example, but we had not yet scored the Middle East, and perhaps OPEC had not yet been played. Then Sadat would be very much the au courant headline, and we would just have to go ahead and let him junta his way around the Americas. But it's exactly the opposite. Africa and Central America remain to be scored, and the Middle East has not only scored, but it's also had OPEC go plorping through. And so that stuff's not coming back for a while. So in other words, I think, A, it's more important to steal a coup from him. I mean, he's already gonna, if you look at junta, even if I steal the coup from him and coup presumably Nigeria is my biggest chance to flip a battleground, he's still going to be able to put two influence from junta into Mexico, which is going to lead him to be already dominating in Central America, and he's going to get realignment rolls against Panama, is what I expect. And so that's going to make Central America look pretty out there on the dire end of things. We can then fill it back in with probably some Eastern European unrest card. We could fill Panama back in. And I think that we will then have time to most likely go into Libya anyway, because he's got other places to expand that are probably higher priority for him, like especially Central America and Africa, and even trying to get his little babies out of Chile before we realign him out of there. So based on the scorecard situation, I don't think Sadat is actually all that urgent as a headline. And so our plan this turn is going to be to, after a grain sales headline, try to steal a coup Nigeria, try to survive as best we can in Central America, maybe take some realignments against Mexico, presuming he doesn't have the scorecard and manage to score it real quick-like, and then get working on our attempt to dominate Africa, because hopefully by then we will be about to control 4 beautiful African battlegrounds, and that's gonna be the main plan. If he gives us an opportunity and we have a free operations time, then sure, I would love to realign Chile before he gets out of it. It's low-ish odds because it's -1 realignments, but if we knock him out, then the reward is high. We will not be voluntarily playing the China card because of Formosan resolution being in effect, giving us domination of Asia. And we'll be looking forward to a point here and there from the Southeast Asia scoring card if that happens to come up. So here we have grain sales, headlining grain sales against junta. And round and round and round she goes, and where she stops is on the Central American scoring card. That's always a crazy thing when you get a scoring card, because of course I can't coup with a scoring card. I can hand it back to him and take a coup, or I can let Central America process for scoring and let him have a wide open junta and a DEFCON 3 to take coups with. And those are hard choices. They're hard choices indeed. So here's the thing. Keeping the scorecard makes Central America score immediately for 1 point. for him. 1 point. Before he can junta in 2 guys to Mexico and then realign Panama and then score Central America, perhaps on action round 1 if his things worked well enough, or if it didn't work well enough, maybe he has ABM treaty and blasts Panama into chowder, and then we're stuck with some desperate attempt to realign Mexico or something before the 10-point hammer comes. So getting out for 1 point instead of somewhere between 5 and 10 points, well, 5 and 7, he's unlikely to actually. If we steal the coup from him, then can't get the 10-point. So there's that. Now, let's look at the alternative for a couple of reasons. If we hand the Central American card back to him and take a coup against Nigeria, so the DEFCON goes to 2, that means he gets to put his guys into Mexico, he gets to realign Panama, but it does mean that he probably doesn't own Nigeria anymore, and he doesn't get to come clobbering into Zaire. So that's the thing, think to yourself, what would you do? Hand it back, or hand it back and take the coup and know you're going to eat a 5, 6, or 7-point victory point little scoring immediately, or play the Central America card now and give him free coup rank, because if he knows Central America is scored, then his junta guys can go into Venezuela, and his coup can go to Zaire. And so now he gets to keep Nigeria, he owns Zaire, and the African situation looks grim. The South American situation looks eventually very dire. I mean, it has scored, but our late game surviving final scoring board position starts to look sort of, laughable. So, late at night before I was about to go on a trip, and I'm just thinking, I don't know what the hell, I decided to hand him back the Central American scoring card. And perhaps that will go down in history as one of about 8 billion giant blunders that I have made, and maybe even one of several in this game. But it's what I did, and we'll see how it comes out. I'm not sure yet. It certainly did not hold true to my oft times victory points now strategy. But I got tempted into playing positionally a little bit. Let's see how it goes here. I instantly regretted doing it, I will say, as soon as I played the card. But here it goes. We'll might as well make hay while the sun shines. Coup attempt in Nigeria. Okay, boom, we're in. We safely own Nigeria. DEFCON goes to 2. Wah, wah, wah. And here comes a pretty scary junta. Junta, unsurprisingly, into Mexico. Realign, surviving in Panama. Oh, and he got us by 1, and that's going to cost us 2 victory points. 1 for the presence and 1 for the battleground. And so, yes, of course, here comes Central America scoring 7 victory points for him, going to 15. So, what do we have to show for that? Well, we've got a lot of Africa, and we kept him out of the upper half of South America. That is the best I can say for that. So I'm going to go ahead and get Sadat played while the Sadating is good to cut him off from Libya. He is going to play Quagmire for influence, and he is going to expand out of Chile while the expanding out of Chile is good. So yeah, we're both kind of now with the after the roar of scoring has settled, we are both now attending to our respective opportunities. I thought that Sadat was more important than a low odds realignment against Chile because Sadat was at least more of a sure thing, and so forth. So that's what I did. And so now we're going to use, ironically, the Arab-Israeli card to expand our control. Mighty Libya. Here comes the arms race, fortunately for influence, since he can't do much else with it. All right, he's making a break. He's making a break for Brazil. And I feel that it is very important to stop him from Brazil, even though he's going to probably be cooing back. Oh, well, we cooed him to exactly 0. Well, that's at least something. All right, here's one piece of good news. He did have the Asian scoring card. He had to score us our 5 points. Did not have any more fuel to try to take our domination away there. So we got that, and we paired him back so he's not in one more score could put him in 20 points range, and that is at least something. So let us space the thing we need to space. Okay, success. Well, we've got it back down to 7 victory points. That's nice. Okay, he spaces puppet governments because he certainly doesn't want to put us into Venezuela and Brazil. So, and he doesn't get in, which seems to be his theme in the space race. We will place some influence. We'll fill up the rest of Africa. And let's go ahead and get a battleground back into Panama for later purposes. Right, action round 6. Okay, he's going to try to, a little bit late, spray some crud into southern Africa. And we will go ahead and shore that up, overprotecting now that we can. He could try to go into, pay the iron price into Zaire, but he would be doing it into the face of a +1 realignment by us, so he probably won't do that. And we'll try to overprotect it in due course. Oh, and he's had to play Panama Canal returned, poking us into there after all, and he's making one little attempt to get next to Brazil in case we don't have big enough cards, but we do have big enough cards. And so, yes, here's your victory point back for the U2 incident, and we will get South America at least to a tie. And we actually get 2 points for ops as the DEFCON goes back to 3. Wah, 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 and we go to turn 6. So that was a mixed bag of a turn for sure. And here is a wad of crud indeed, to see what we want to headline. So, turn 6 cards. So first of all, we've got Southeast Asia. So unless he comes up with a brush war out of somewhere in Thailand, then it looks like we're getting points there. That's good. Africa. That is good to see. It looks like we might even be able to arrange a powerful, the big 6-point domination of Africa instead of the mere 4-point domination. And if things broke really our way, and he somehow, I can't imagine him not using his coup in Africa, since that's the main cool thing that hasn't scored yet. But say he chose poorly or something, or his headline didn't work out and we managed to headline. If we managed to headline an amazingly lucky Miss Linvy and get a coup out of that and steal the coup, then knocking him back and ABM treating him out of Algeria could produce, in theory, it's in sight, the big 11-point total control of Africa situation, of which we all dream. So we'll keep dreaming, but it looks pretty good, because even if he takes his coup, well, then we already dominate, and we could even take an ABM treaty coup to get back, or we can save it to frig around in South America to improve our final scoring position. Because the thing is, starting to look like after this turn, we're going to be in decent shape on the scoreboard. So then, who'd have thunk it, right? But then we need to therefore be thinking about our final scoring position, our final, when the scoring cards come back and then all the scorings happen again at the turn 10, we got to be thinking about that stuff. So, rest of the hand. So we continue to carry along the dross of the Korean War. We have ABM Treaty, which is, of course, an excellent and awesome card. And since we have the Missile Envy card, we know he's not going to be stealing. If we didn't have the Missile Envy card, I would be quite worried about a Missile Envy headline, and I might be tempted to go ahead and headline ABM Treaty, even though it doesn't give us our optimum use of it to regain an African battleground after he coups us. Olympic Games Ops. Willy Brandt is going to have to be Ops. Brezhnev is going to want to go at the end of the turn so that he doesn't get any benefit from it. Lone Gunman is a bad card. It represents a little bit of existential DEFCON risk for us, but we don't have to worry. He doesn't have any way to attack our hand size until turn 8 at least, with things like Aldrich Ames. And so I think we're just going to have to hold that along and hope that JFK comes to bail us out at some point here. Missile Envy is gonna be our headline here. There's really no contest to it because it's going to steal maybe one of his good cards, maybe not. If we get really lucky, we'll actually be able to steal the coup with it. If he has to hand us one of, a Soviet event, then that would be absolutely glorious. Probably won't happen because it'll be his absolute last choice would be to let us steal the coup here. And then African scoring we are going to use to dominate Africa, hopefully, unless things go absolutely horribly wrong. Okay, so this one, not such a hard turn. I'm glad it wasn't the homework turn because it'd be a little too easy. And by the way, he's headlining Che. So that's a little bit unfortunate on the African front because it looks like he's going to take all of our African non-battlegrounds, but we'll be able to coup them back, hopefully. And we've got enough ops. I think we should still be able to dominate Africa. And honestly, we have nothing else better to do except to try. So here we go. Missile Envy headline. Here comes Che. He is bonking the African states and bonking the, whatever they're called, Southeast African states. And we have stolen shuttle diplomacy from him. Well, that's interesting. It might not have been my first preference, given that it may give us an extra domination opportunity in the Middle East, but no, I would have definitely rather had ops or many other cards. But it's there, you take what you get, and he is forced to use Missile Envy for his coup. He takes a coup and he gets one of a sort in Angola. So I'm gonna come in hard and crush him like a bug with the ABM Treaty. I don't actually have a way, I would have normally wanted to pay the iron price and just take it first and have a little ops war and then have the ABM Treaty as the fallback, but I don't have any 3 cards that aren't disastrous to play. China card is needed for Formosan purposes, and Brezhnev would give all his things +1. So, coup it is, kaboom, and we're back in. So he's gonna fight us for Africa. And the problem is I actually don't have any way without a 3-ops card to restore domination of Africa, because I can't even do the thing where I take 2 battleground countries at once. So bearing in mind shuttle diplomacy, the value of Formosan resolution has gone down slightly. It still is important for the final scoring, but I think I'm gonna need the China card to establish domination of Africa. And I hate to do it, but I think that's how it has to be. We're just gonna go ahead and flip it and overprotect it. So, all right, so he is playing into Europe to get his domination back in Europe and put another point into Cameroon. Fortunately, that gives us a great place to coup, to get our domination going here. All right, he's dominating Europe, which was a hard one for us to contest anyway. We'll go ahead and take our hard-won Africa domination, and he is going to space the bear trap successfully, but not for any points. Okay, well, so that was bloody. That was bloody. I'll be interested to know if any of you would have just let Africa go, let us not dominate. Mind you, he wouldn't have dominated. We would have just been scoring it for 1 point in order to preserve the Formosan resolution and control the China card, because I can see that as a valid argument. I went for victory points now this time. And speaking of victory points now, we do need to go ahead and cash the 2-point Southeast Asia card. And he will prop up some of his little regimes in Europe and Iran. Maybe in Poland he's getting ready for a pope or something. I'm going to go ahead and space Brezhnev to try to get to the I can discard 1 card from my hand space, because I would love to be able to discard Lone Gunman and then various other horrible cards I'm going to eventually get stuck with in my hand, and I think it's worth going ahead and risking that coming back. But no luck on Space Shot. Oh, but we do have a luck on JFK. We are allowed to excrete as many cards as we want to and draw new replacements. So obviously we're going to be excreting Lone Gunman. Now, we only have one play left here, and so one should always be careful in a situation at the end of the turn, the end of turn JFK thing. If you discard 2 or more cards and you draw back 2 or more scorecards, you can actually end up instantly losing the game on held scorecard. So that would normally be a consideration. However, there actually aren't, not only are there not 2 or more scorecards left, there aren't even 1 scorecard left. So that's not a danger. And so I actually don't like any of these cards. Willy Brandt gives him a victory point, and Korean War would give him a 1 in 6 chance of eating South Korea. So I am going to give the discard pile back all of these cards. Lone Gunman, see you later. Willy Brandt, Auf Wiedersehen, Korean War, Kamsamnida. Off they go. And let's see what we get back. Okay, we get back SALT negotiations, Cuban Missile Crisis, and Portuguese Empire crumbles. I'd say that was a very good and successful trade overall. And where is he going to go with his influence? He is crashing into Egypt. Interesting. Contesting this whole Middle East domination thing. Well, I think we're going to play Cuban Missile Crisis for ops. We don't have a lot of use for Cuban Missile Crisis. He's got the things in Cuba. I don't see an instant need for it with no scoring cards hanging in the balance. So I'm going to go ahead and take Egypt back, and I'm going to pollute Saudi Arabia so it's a little harder for him to take over. It's not that I necessarily want to take it myself. It's just I want to discourage him from taking it. And that is where we are going to leave things. Going into turn 7. Let's see what we get. DEFCON goes to 3. The reshuffle happens, and we have gotten those cards. And then after the reshuffle, our reach around, as it were, is going to be Junta, a bear trap, and destalinization. Not bad. by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so turn 7, that brings us to your homework. With 3 points on the scoreboard, 3 points for the bad guys, and this interesting, and I have to say not nearly as hopeless looking as it once might have looked, situation. Somehow I have blundered my way into an almost doable game here, or at least I'm not saying I have an advantage here, but I'm saying that, like, you know, we're still in this, people. We are still in this game. Look at these cards. Tell me what you would headline for turn 7. I suppose I should reveal to you what his headline is. He is going to go for decolonization. Yeah, that's right. He's finally going to get to decolonize, but apparently never de-Stalinize. And let's look at the cards that he has in his hand for sure, because it's the infamous reshuffle, go and count those cards thing. He is holding Our Man in Tehran. He's holding a Brush War. He's holding the Ussuri River Skirmish. He is perhaps going to be electing John Paul II Hope. He's got some Latin American, whatever those are called, Death Squad, that's right. He's got the Organization of American States. And then, of course, one of his little reshuffle around cards is this decolonization that he is headlining. So he's only got, I think, 2 other cards that we haven't seen. That's interesting. So he knows that we have all the cards except for the last 3. And so let's think about this. Let's make a plan. Let's try to keep this baby competitive. And I'm going to play you out with the most mid-war Soviet anthem I can find. This is in 1977. They finally came up with some new lyrics. In fact, it was the same guy that wrote the first lyrics, came back and wrote some second lyrics, removing Stalin's name from the song to make it more politically correct for the time. So here is the Soviet national anthem as of the 1970s, as at the late mid-war going into the early late war. And we will see you next time. We're playing Ziemowit, and it is Twilight Struggle. Play the experts.